Well, welcome all to a really timely discussion, on effectively building a COVID secure space for event customers and attendees. I'm really happy to welcome two ABCO members, two colleagues, Samantha Shamkh, who is the head of conventions at Excel London, and Parul Patel, who is the senior event manager at Renewable UK. They are already collaborating on an event that's going to be held, the Global Offshore Wind event, which will be held at Excel at the end of September. I don't know if you feel the same, but it feels very similar to me having to do this myself in my own organization. To pivot, much like we were last year, and pivoting to virtual formats that really have to understand what is needed to do so, because it is different.
Yeah, it does absolutely feel very different in the sense that there's lots more challenges we're facing this time around in the COVID world as we talk about it.
Yeah, and I think the same, if we look at how I think one of the advantages Excel has had is since lockdown was lifted last summer, we have actually been running events in some way, shape or form. So we've been doing filming, we've been running exams, we've been running small training, so everything that we could do within the guidelines. So what that has enabled us to do is actually put into place and, start thinking about the measures and actually putting some of those into practice, seeing how people behave, delegates behave, and being able to adapt. So while I agree with Parul, you're having to think about things that we wouldn't have had to do before. And I think certainly from the operations point of view, it's you're having to almost relearn your job a little bit. But I think we do have an advantage of having been able to do that. And we just hosted the Formula E Championships this weekend as well. So we've been able to build up quite a lot of experience and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So while it is different, I think we're at the moment in a good position to be able to work with our organisers to help support them when we get back to our busy events in the autumn.
That's a great place. I mean, that is a really good place to start, Samantha. Maybe perhaps you can elaborate a little bit more about what you as a venue has needed to introduce to, test these events that are here, and then maybe move towards the events that are forthcoming in the autumn.
Yeah, definitely. So if we look at what, some of the if you like, the hard measures that we've introduced. So as we know from a lot of what's being talked about in press conferences, etc., ventilation is one of the key aspects that we needed to look at. So we've actually enhanced our whole ventilation system, and that was actually down to the fact that we were obviously a hospital last year as well. So we had to improve that. So basically we've enhanced the percentage of fresh air that's coming in through our ventilation systems. So that's a really positive step for us on that front. And we're also looking, the normal measures like, you've got update hand sanitizer stations throughout the venue. And another key one is we've got sort of access control in the bathrooms and sort of the toilets. So again, we can monitor people going in, enhanced cleaning regimes. So all of those sorts of measures have been put in place to be able to make sure that as a venue, we're creating a safe and secure space.
Indeed, and speaking to a lot of other venues as well, it's you probably have to be really careful on how you manage your own staff throughout, because at such a large venue, there is quite a lot of staff that you need to be operating such a space.
Yes, exactly. And those are obviously measures that we are kind of reviewing and finalising our policy at the moment, because obviously as an employer, we have a duty towards our staff as well as to delegates and visitors and everyone attending the venue. So what it is making sure that whatever guidance and measures we put in place is designed to protect all of those stakeholders in line with whatever guidance is there at the time, but it's also looking at what we need to do to keep our staff and our visitors and everyone in the venue safe.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, Parul, what about yourself? How has event planning from an in-house PCO changed from pre-COVID to when we're considering our events now? Because I actually know, and I think you might mention that you've got a large event that's being hosted at Excel forthcoming. Is that September?
Yes, 29th, 30th of September. Yeah, so pre-COVID, we all had our checklists. We just went about getting all those checklists ticked. We did our assessments. This time around, with COVID around, we've had to sort of change our mindset, adapt to working from home. changing the home environment into an office environment, and it's creating those extra steps that you need to sort of make sure that you've captured all the essentials that essential items that you need to sort of tick off with COVID in mind. So safety being the first. How do you keep everyone safe at a venue? And it's just not like attendees, including staff, like you said, Samantha. You know, everyone has to be accounted for, all the support staff that you have on site as well. And also, you know, in terms of considering what else you can do, is one of the major challenges that I'm facing right now is the lack of resources and staff with contracting companies that we work with, our contractors, because they've had to go through the change that they've experienced as well last year. Their staff numbers have reduced. So getting things done is not as quick as it used to be pre-COVID. So post-COVID, those are the things that you have to sort of take into account as well. So planning in advance takes a lot. I mean, you can plan as much as you want, but the delivery sometimes is delayed due to other factors. So the time scales have to be really matched to the best that you can. So last minute requests are definitely a no-no. You can forget about that. And also just making sure that the transition from a physical event to a hybrid. So this year we also included hybrid events. We've done so many hybrid events. Last year we had 150 webinar sessions and 4 hybrid events that we did within the space of 4 months. So the requirement and the challenges in those are different to the challenges that you're facing now, because you're going into the physical attendance level. So it's definitely different, and something, it's, you know, I'm enjoying the challenge. It's quite nice to be thinking about things that you wouldn't be thinking about. And
then I suppose you have to think about how you help your customer confidence that you are actually approaching this the right way. You know, including, you know, perhaps how you are dealing with international delegates.
So in terms of, obviously we know that international delegates this year will be different than, you know, first of all, because companies themselves are not sending their staff abroad, not allowing them to travel. And also people don't feel confident enough to travel because they've lived a year with being in lockdown. So it's almost changing the perception, and then making sure that we address to them and making them feel confident that we are providing a secure venue, working with Excel, that they should come and, you know, they will be safe with us. So it's just making sure that, like you said, collaborating with Excel, making sure that we can do everything that we can in our power to have all these elements in place so that people do feel secure, and communicating that to them, that we are here, we've done this, feel secure. We'd really love to welcome everyone back to the physical live event stage, and we're here for you. So just building that confidence and making sure that we communicate that confidence out to all the participants out there.
A really good chance for me to segue to both of you, and then exactly how a venue and a PCO can collaborate to get some of this confidence and get some of the safety measures in place. You know, how have you guys worked together for the point of global?
I think from our point of view, it's about, and you know, you mentioned it before, it is collaboration. And while I don't want to overuse that word, I think living in such uncertain times for all of us, it's almost a little bit like we're having to start our jobs again from scratch, because everything is very different. And I think it comes down to having that relationship and being completely open and transparent with each other throughout the whole process. And I think it's being flexible and being prepared to adapt and change and being able to do that. So, you know, Parul's talked about the communications piece. That's something that we've really done a lot of work on. Again, looking back to our exams last year, you know, we created bespoke materials that the organisers could use to send out to their delegates, that gave them all the information they need about, you know, where to go, how to get there, you know, what systems we had in place. At that point, we had one-way systems in where they were coming in one way and going out another. We talked a little bit about the measures that we've got in place, like enhanced ventilation, like hand sanitizers, like enhanced cleaning regimes. So all of that is being communicated to delegates. So whereas in the past it may have been a, you know, come to Global Offshore, it's going to be a brilliant event network. This has come, but this is, you know, you still want to do that, but you still have to get the message out there that it's going to be a safe and secure space for them to come. And, you know, we also work with our local hotels to really create that sort of campus bubble a little bit as well. So, you know, you can come, you can minimize the need to travel by staying on site. The hotels all adhere to secure standards as well. So it's looking at that messaging, working on that messaging with the organizer, and making sure that we're creating the right messages in the right way to support the delegates. But I think it just comes back to having you know, trusting each other and just being able to adapt. I think that's a key thing at the moment, is keeping the communication channels open so that when something happens, we can quite quickly respond to that if needs be.
Agreed. Great point, Samantha. It's just, you know, all the measures that Excel are taking currently in terms of encouraged face mask wearing, extra fogging of halls overnight, extra cleaning, toilet system, traffic light toilet system. It's everything that we're communicating to our attendees, and we have guidance on our website on that as well. And in addition to that, Renewable UK, so we've got 4-meter aisles, and that will maintain now throughout the conference, even during restrictions being lifted out. So I think that gives people a bit of reassurance that you won't be walking in front of each other or behind each other so close by. There's space for people to go one way and walk the other way. We will be encouraging our attendees to wear masks and also download the NHS COVID app, so there will be track and trace available. And we will have QR codes as well throughout the areas that we're using for the event, and we will be providing antibacterial stations as well in our space as well. So at the moment, we don't have any strict rules because the government guidance is just a guidance, it's not rules. So again, like Samantha said, we have to be flexible and adapt very quickly if we need to. So those are the things that you have to plan in advance and just keep it in the back of your head that what happens in 6 weeks? What if in 6 weeks we've got to change everything and we only have 3 weeks to deliver that? We have to be prepared for that. And, just again, working together, collaborating, transparency, and keeping each other communicated so that we can communicate right to all our attendees and exhibitors and contractors and all the workers working with us. It's staff working with us is very important.
A really good point that you made there that I want to just ask about, if I may, Parul, is that, we don't quite know exactly what people are asking to, and when we start attending events and stuff, and it's really difficult for organizers to launch their ticket sales without having the ability to pivot to a changing government guidelines. So what I'm saying is that we don't know whether we will need a COVID status certification or not. So how are you approaching that when you ask people to register? Are you asking them that type of information or not at this time?
We are not during the registration process. We're not asking people to sort of prove any form of there's no checklist to take. Yeah, declaration. So, but we are advising and encouraging attendees to download the NHS COVID-19 app as a track and trace, because that is currently what the government is saying that you should do in a large space. If that changes in a few weeks, in 6 weeks' time, when Boris is supposed to reevaluate the situation, we will advise our attendees what the change is and what the requirement is.
Absolutely. This is a major challenge for us as venues and organizers to really understand the best practice for this, because I don't think that anybody knows at this time. And I think it's a challenge for all of us over the coming months. And hopefully we will get more guidance from governments, and other event best practice like the MIA that might help us understand this a bit more. But absolutely good answer. Okay, so listen, you spoke earlier about really communicating to each other quite early and stuff. And for a big event like Global, you really do need a big lead in time anyway. But I suppose this and how we are having to approach these, ask the questions of ourselves and to try to get these extra understandings. And I suppose that lead in time is increased now.
Yeah, definitely. We could probably, as I said before, you could plan all you want, but the current restrictions and things that are hindering your progress are still there. It's live. It's not hidden behind the curtains. You're faced with it every day. You try and tick a task off, and it's almost to the point where, oh, but I'm relying on this person for this information and they haven't come back to me. Oh, I need to chase them. So there's always these barriers in delivering at the end of the day. I mean, before the event, we did our risk assessment, which is very different. The risk assessment was set to those months when we were still in lockdown, and then come into a couple of months into summer, do another risk assessment, it's different. And then what will happen in 6 weeks will be different as well. So we're continually updating our risk assessment as well. So as I said, things keep changing. At the moment, wear your mask while you're indoors, keep your distance, but we'll know more when we know more in 6 weeks' time.
Samantha, this is a good question for you as well, I think, because when you are looking at people who are interested in taking space at Excel, one, I think that you're probably quite busy with that, with us not being able to have face-to-face events over the last year, but also you're probably also thinking that we need lead-in time ourselves to help work with the event organizer to make sure that we can communicate a safe event, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it is in that sense, it's right from the outset. So certainly when we're talking to organisers and we're talking to a number of PCOs for congresses next year as well, and towards the end of this year. And I think it's one of the key things from our point of view. Again, it goes back to, without wanting to overuse the word, it goes back to collaboration, but it goes back to right from the outset. Even at pre-contract or contract stages, it's allowing for different scenarios. So it's allowing for the what ifs and saying, if this is the space you need now, but if you need to change to that. And it's really trying to understand from work closely with the PCOs, and also for the PCOs to work closely with their end clients to say, what are they trying to achieve? And obviously, the beauty of face-to-face, and if you look at all of various bits of research that are coming out at the moment about the need to get back to face, whether it's you've got even the head of the European Commission on climate change saying you need to meet face to get things done. It's understanding, really trying to get to the nub of what the value of the face element is, and then design the proposition and the space accordingly. So whether you're saying it's enhanced networking, it's engagement, and being flexible with that, but it's really understanding what the main objectives are and the reasons why face-to-face is so important for that particular client, and then how can we adapt and work our proposal in line with that, but build that flexibility that things may change over the months. You may be planning for a congress with 1,000 delegates, but suddenly everything does open up and you've got your usual 3,000 coming. So again, it just goes back to really understanding between the different parties what the key drivers are and how we can help support that, and then how we can help plan for that.
I suppose for a venue like yourself, where you have lots of opportunity for multi-tenancy,
yeah,
it's even more complex in many ways, and even smaller venues that have different rooms to use. I mean, it becomes more complex in how they manage that.
It does. But it also gives us an advantage because we have got a lot of space, so we can adapt and we can build flexibility in to allow for a sudden change to potential social distancing, or numbers were initially expected to be lower but are going higher because everything is getting back to a bit normality. So one of the advantages we do have as a venue is we have got a lot of space, we have got a lot of rooms, and we can work closely with organisers to make the most of the space that we've got.
Sorry, I was going to mention one other thing. I mean, for this year, obviously, because of the strange situation we're still in, we've had to make our cancellation policy a lot flexible. We could cancel in live attendance from 7 days from the event. So, before we wouldn't have such flexible cancellation policies, but now we do. So these are the kind of things that you have to sort of make changes and adapt and sort of incorporate in your messaging as well.
Great comment. I was going to ask you about that because I think that is something that must be considered for event organizers these days. Going back to you, if I may, Samantha, do you guys have or use or are thinking about putting together a risk assessment template to help organizers consider what to do?
Yeah, so we do have a risk assessment template, but again, what it comes back to is ongoing discussion, because you can't really have a one size fits all template. So while we can have a template about these are the points you need to consider, and this is what needs to be done, it can't be, it has to be this, this, and this, because actually what works for one might not work for the other. And if one person's doing that, if then another person is saying, right, well, we need to, we don't see this as a risk, or we want to do it this way, then that might throw up another risk. So again, it comes back to having a template and support to help organisers that maybe aren't used to doing it to the extent that we need it now. And we've certainly found that with even, you know, again, going back to our exam clients, they've never had to do a risk assessment before, because exams are, you know, relatively easy to run. So we are definitely able to provide support to create that and give them the things they need to think about. But at the same time, we're mindful that it can't be this is a take it or leave it template, and that it then is done in consultation with our health and safety team, with the health and safety teams of the organisers, with our operations teams, that we look at everything very much on a case-by-case basis. And as you say, you know, a business conference for 1,000 delegates would be have different considerations to, say, a Comic-Con with 20,000. And I think, you know, just going back to Comic-Con as an example, and the appetite for face-to-face, they put their tickets on sale, I think 2 days ago, and they sold out 20,000 a day within, you know, within that first day. So there is definitely an appetite to come back. It's just us making sure that we can help and make that as safe and secure as possible.
You know, yeah, it's a changing environment on top of that. You know, so how do you guys both see this changing over the next 6 months, the next year? So, Samantha, you go first this time.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think as we touched on earlier, if you look at a lot of the research and studies and certainly feedback we're hearing from all of our clients. I mean, there was an ICA research piece that was done that said that, you know, 84% of associations that responded to that want to get to face-to-face meetings as soon as possible. You know, there are various bits coming out where you talk, you know, there was UFI, which is the Global Association for Exhibition Organisers. They're saying that 92% of their companies that normally exhibit at events want to return to exhibit at events, but that have a demonstrable ROI. And I think that's where we see the future heading, is that whereas in the past you may have had, as a delegate or visitor, you may have gone to 7, 8, 9 events a year, you might only now go to 1 or 2. So I think where we see this is we want to make sure that we're working with the best, you know, best in field in their congress, in their field, to deliver the best event that has a real ROI. And I think that will start to show that where you can demonstrate that, and where you can demonstrate that engagement with delegates and the reason to be face to face. I mean, if you look at it but you know, you can consume education online, that's relatively easy to do, but what you can't replicate is that peer-to-peer engagement and that conversation in between sessions, or with a sponsor that suddenly has this light bulb moment that leads to change. And I think, as you say, the fact that something like the COP Summit, you know, in order to get change, have change happen and things happen, you have to get the right people in the room at the same time to be able to deliver that. So I think that, you know, that is how conferences will develop, is you have to start looking at the programs, and maybe you know, we've seen with some of our clients, our association congresses for next year, is they're changing the program slightly, and they're reducing the number and length of session rooms, but building in more networking time and building in actual networking spaces within the venue. So I think it's looking at how I think we can't just go back to doing things the way they were. I think this is a real opportunity to look at how you change your physical conference and use the virtual aspect to enhance that, but also enhance the physical element that gives delegates a real reason and a real benefit in attending, rather than just consuming it online.
Great answer. Parul?
I think hybrid for PCOs, I mean, definitely hybrid is something that's going to stay with us. Like Samantha said, digitally, how do you appeal the event to a digital audience? And that's something that you have to sort of engage and take it on board and implement. So this year, our event is hybrid. So we have ticket types for virtual attendees as well. having said that, if I'm looking at the amount of tickets sold for physical attendees and virtual attendees, physical is taking the lead because that's it. People want to come and network and see each other and talk face to face rather than being stuck behind a screen. So, if you haven't got hybrid, definitely something to look at because it still will pick up in popularity should something happen in the last minute. And also in terms of organizing in terms of like working with venues, finding venues that you've had great support with. So with Excel, we've had great commitment and support working with them all these years, and we'll continue to build on that relationship and work together to deliver these events in the future. But for also sometimes small venues, it's kind of hard to sort of get that sort of support because obviously business is day-to-day business rather than a contract that goes yearly or biannually sort of thing. So it's just, yeah, I think it's just going to be different in the sense that we have to sort of change the way we work in the future. Definitely adding, the budget has to be tallied more towards hybrid digital cost than in-person cost. And I think hybrid's there to stay with us for many years to come.
We know that the sector is diligent and acts responsibly and maintains the highest service standards that we can, and that we continue to proceed with caution throughout this next transition. We absolutely know that anyway, and that's how we've always acted. It's hugely important as we look to ensure both the government and the public, we ensure both those bodies that we can deliver safe events and minimize the risk of transmission. Anyways, thanks everybody to listening. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Parul, for really contributing to a good discussion here. It's really great to hear your insight, how you're both approaching it. Lots of questions to be asked and answered. We don't have all the answers, I know, and we're still learning. But before I go, I just want to mention, and I would invite everybody to have a review of the recent MIA publication on outlining best practice in this way. Some great practical advice, great questions in that piece for organizers to consider. I think it's entitled Operating and Building Confidence in a Risk-Averse World. So, on my closing statement, I would say have a look at that, and I'm sure, thank you again to Samantha and Parul, but enjoy.